The engineers from Gulfstream Jets, they've been here and they told us our tolerances are tighter than theirs.
That's Jody Espina, saxophonist and founder of JodyJazz Mouthpieces. I recently visited their factory in Savannah, Georgia, where I was filming a video about the process of making what I consider to be some of the best mouthpieces in the world. It's also where the BetterSax burn-in mouthpieces are made. Jody and I sat down for a conversation about how he first got into making mouthpieces, how he managed to build such a successful business from scratch, why JodyJazz mouthpieces are so good, and a whole lot more. Please enjoy. Okay, I'm here in Savannah, Georgia at the JodyJazz factory with Jody Espina. And I've been filming this sort of factory tour and learning more about how the mouthpieces are made. And we're going to make a great video about, showing people the process. And that in itself is super fascinating because it's interesting. I've been doing all these factory tours lately,
Saxophone
factories, and seeing how they're made. And in different factories, there's different methods for doing all of the different processes. It's really fascinating. And for making mouthpieces, there's lots of different ways to make mouthpieces.
Yeah.
And, you guys here have your system. So, maybe you could talk a little bit of just like an overview of like how JodyJazz mouthpieces are made.
Well, in a way, it's how they aren't made. It's how I came up, where I was mentored by Santi Runyon. The first mouthpieces, the first two models were made in his factory. Especially that first model, he had customized a mouthpiece for me. He refaced it, and it was great. It was actually burning. And I said, wow, I love that. And he said, we can make that for you and call it JodyJazz. And then we started making them in his factory. They were molded pieces, and you're taking that, it looks pretty crude when it comes out of the mold. You're putting that on a kind of a lathe that's kind of made to do mouthpieces. It was very hard.
These were made out of what material?
Plastic.
Okay.
It was a clear blue mouthpiece.
Right.
And when he had refaced it, I was shocked how good it got for me. And because I really wasn't aware that you could do that to a mouthpiece.
Right.
And that's why I got so fascinated. So it wasn't easy to do this, get this on the machine, the facing, and then there's a lot of handwork after that. So I started going down there 7 times a year. I learned everything, from those guys at first, his crew, and then Santi. And even still then, when I wasn't in the factory, mouthpieces would come to me, and they weren't that benchmark. And so I was tweaking. It just kind of drove me nuts over the years. Then my first hard rubber mouthpiece, before I got the factory, was made from Barry woodwinds. And we got something, but again, I still had to do a lot of work here, and they still weren't as consistent as I wanted. It's a kind of a known thing in mouthpieces. Some people say, oh, you got to try 5 of these or 10 of these. And that just drives me crazy, especially if my name is on it. Mm. So finally, when I was able to move to Savannah, Georgia, and build this factory, how are we going to make them? Are we going to mold mouthpieces? We're going to make them with CNC technology, starting with bar stock. And, everybody will see that when you do that video. But we can make the blank precisely. You'll see what the blank is, and then we can put it on the mill and make it. And like I told you, it's taken years and years to get as accurate. Just because you have these CNC machines doesn't mean you're going to make really good stuff or that you're going to be that consistent, because you can just zip through it as fast as you can, and there's not that consistency. There's a ton of things we've learned over the years. So, and that's by testing every mouthpiece against a benchmark is the way that we've been able to do that. Doing handwork, and you saw everybody back there, right? Would you say it's an uptight environment or relaxed, or?
It looked like and everyone I spoke to, I mean, there's a few people told me they really love working here, very sincerely. They said, oh, I love the job because they like they like working with their hand. I think they like making a beautiful finished product at the end, and they're proud of the things that they're doing. So yeah, and everyone seemed to be definitely. We had a nice lunch, guys. You had your employees cook lunch. No, it's a great environment here.
So nobody back there has ever been told to hurry up. And when you're trying to make money, faster is better.
Right.
And so and nobody's yelled at or anything, but this has to be perfect. And so take your time to do it perfect. If it's not, we're going to come behind those newer employees and we're going to fix it. But that's the thing. It's just got to be what it's got to be. And I can go in a store, I can go anywhere and not be worried about pulling one of my mouthpieces out and it's not playing.
Well, yeah, but because you're play testing every single thing that goes out. So that's like an extreme level of quality control, which is great. Here's the thing. So when people see the amount of sophisticated machinery involved in different processes, whether it's making saxophones or making mouthpieces, I think, we have this romantic idea of the old mouthpiece makers doing, so much by hand and saxophones and everything. So, and this is part of maybe the allure of vintage instruments and vintage mouthpieces. It's just this romantic notion of, but the reality of all that is the level of consistency of all those things is really all over the place. But what is striking to me going around the factory, we're seeing how you've got like two different levels going on here. You've got this super sophisticated technology working, and you guys are working really hard dialing in that to the most extreme detail possible and constantly working to improve the programs of the machine so you have that happening, and then each mouthpiece is going through several stations where handwork is being done. It's not just like one person's taking it and doing a little bit. I mean, there is, and everyone will see this in the video, but there's several levels of, okay, now the machine has done its work. Now is when the human element goes in. And so you're getting, because you could just take it out of the machine and play it, and it would play.
It plays. It doesn't play as good, but we have that ability.
Right.
And there are plenty of mouthpieces that are made off the machine. Nobody's touching them.
Right. Right, because that would be the easy way.
I haven't found one that plays.
Right, so it's interesting. So you can think about, okay, so you could do it that way, but you could also then say, okay, let's train a bunch of people to do some really precise work to get this next 10 or 15% of what we want to be where we want to be.
Yeah, and that's how we're making your mouthpiece, the BetterSax, the burn-in mouthpiece.
And that's how you get this sort of, for me, it's better because you're getting the vintage vibe of the human element involved to a very high degree, but then you're also getting the modern component of that consistency. We're starting with a much more consistent, we're starting at a much more consistent point. So now the human element is not, the end result is just going to be that much better every time.
As long as we stay on it
Right.
and keep watching it and comparing it to the best one we ever made.
Right.
And by the way, those vintage mouthpieces that we talk about, not one of them, almost nothing in the world is fully handmade. So if they were made on lathe and mill. They might not have been controlled by the computer or done our 3D drawing, but they were made on a lathe and a mill, which is mechanical, and it's the same process. And then there was handwork. There might have been more handwork, or they were molded, and then they come out really crude.
Right.
And I can give you a picture of a molded mouthpiece out of the mold, what it looks like. Then there's so much. That's why there's so much variability, because there's so many manual operations that go into it to get it where it should be, and there's no way to be precise about that.
The more handwork that needs to be done, the more material that needs to be removed by hand, obviously the less consistency you're going to have.
Yeah. And you could make that mouthpieces that way. They have made great mouthpieces. That's why some of those vintage mouthpieces are great. It's because of the handwork.
Right.
But not all of them are great.
Right. And now what we should be able to have in an ideal world is you're buying a mouthpiece, a JodyJazz mouthpiece or whatever, and you want to be able to expect them all to be identical or almost nearly identical as possible, whether you buy it here or in Australia or in China.
We expect it in golf clubs.
Right.
We expect it in every other thing.
iPhones, exactly.
And we never expected it in mouthpiece. One thing, the reason for that is because it's so precise. The littlest thing changes it.
Right.
The engineers from Gulfstream jets, they're made here in Savannah. They've been here and they told us our tolerances are tighter than theirs.
Right. Wow. Amazing.
For the aerospace industry.
Yeah. So, and nobody's life is at stake when playing on, a jazz mouthpiece, but that's interesting. What would be interesting if you could talk a little bit more about, about sort of the story of how because you touched on that with Santi Runyon, and coming here, and I was talking with Colin last night and this morning. So I mean, it's really impressive in the relatively short period of time how you've built this really impressive facility and business, and maybe you could talk about that process.
It's a process, you're right, because I became a musician, successful musician in New York City, successful enough I was able to buy a house in Westchester County, a nice house, and but I was working my butt off, going door to door, giving lessons in the richest county in the world, in New York, in Westchester County, and teaching ensembles and stuff, and doing gigs, all kind of weddings and all kind of recordings. So, but I was hustling so much that I started to get burnt out. I started to do this thing called the artist way that works on your creativity, and it had me start to think in a whole different way about energy, about creativeness, and it put me on this track where I met Santi Runyon, and I wasn't looking for mouthpieces, and I went and played his 93rd birthday party. I went back to have a mouthpiece of his that I was playing. I said, I can't play it anymore. He said, come back and I wanted it more free, more bottom. It's what I'm always looking for, free blowing and bottom. No matter how bright it is, it's got to be full. He said, I'll reface it for you, and he did it, and I loved it. And I think he was trying to make me a customer, meaning he could sell some more mouthpieces. He knew I was in New York. He liked me. There's the full story is on a TED Talk. Just Google Jody Espina and TED Talk. Okay. And it's called Creative Confidence. But, he said, we can make that mouthpiece for you and call it JodyJazz. And I thought at first I'd sell a few mouthpieces to my students. But as I thought about it there and I saw what he did, I was fascinated. And I said, I think I could sell these mouthpieces. I can make this because it's different than what he's making. It was his basic mouthpiece. But it's like what happens sometimes, you get a blank from a place and then you do your own thing on it. So through that process, I started a business, but he was supplying. I didn't have to have this infrastructure. And it was a good little business, but I had to put my quality control on that thing, which was very, it was surprising. I didn't know mouthpieces were so inconsistent. And we had to really do that. And that's how we got a reputation that had a nice feel, but it was consistent. People started slowly over the years to trust me. So really, I was still in New York and up to 2008. still, the business was quite successful. We had the DV already, but I was still being supplied mouthpieces. And I'd go travel and work in a place and try and get what I needed from that place. And then I moved here to Savannah, Georgia, because it was for family reasons. My brother lived here. He said, we got to get our mom here, who's in Tampa. We got to take care of her. And she was my girlfriend at the time. You guys can start having kids down here. And we did. So I said, okay, it's family responsibility. We moved down here. She luckily came with me. We got married. We had kids. We built this factory. And finally, I could do it my way. And took big loans. It's just a huge risk. Because it was so much easier just to have people make mouthpieces for me. My real overhead was a few employees I had and advertising, marketing. Now it's infrastructure, everything. It's real estate. It's these very expensive machines. We have 5 CNC machines.
How many people work here?
25.
Wow. Yeah, big
25. At the beginning of the pandemic, it was 15. And we grew through the pandemic. Wow. And thanks in part some to you, because you introduced us to a lot of people during that pandemic. You reviewed our mouthpieces and things. And a lot of people were at home.
Yeah.
We came out with a custom dark during the pandemic. People were driving their family crazy. They were too loud.
Yeah.
That custom dark exploded because it was so beautiful sounding. And
good timing.
Yeah, it was fortuitous timing. It takes a real leap. I know some great mouthpiece makers who have stayed right where they are. They only have them, maybe one other employer or something. They're comfortable with that, and they make good mouthpieces. You can only make so many, and often if they do any marketing, then they get inundated, and it's this back order city. Yeah. But for me, the way this feels, and I always thought business people were soulless, greedy. That's how I thought about it. And I got into this music products business, and I have some of the best friends. I met so many cool, beautiful people that are in it for the right reason. They really want to help people have a beautiful musical experience. And especially with me, I don't ever want a kid in that band to be sabotaged by poor equipment.
Yeah.
Which can happen easily. Some of those stock mouthpieces, manufacturer only paid $3 or $4 for, and they're not sealing. You can't get your low notes. You can't get. It's just like you have leaks in the horn.
But the kid could never know that.
They would never know.
They just think, I'm terrible at saxophone.
I'm terrible.
I'm going to give up.
The guy next to me is great. She's playing great. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Then I meet those people later, and I say I'm a musician. They say I play the radio. I can't play.
Right.
That's not true. You just had a bad experience.
Right.
Everybody should be playing. So it's been this thing. But speaking like business wise, for some reason I've always felt a business it's like a plant or something. In order to really work properly, it needs to grow. I like to grow organically, not like go, beat the bushes, but it has to grow, or else it could be going backwards, and then you're laying off somebody.
Right.
And that's my my prime thing. We didn't lay off anybody during the pandemic. Everybody kept working, and so that's the big responsibility. Even why I want to make sure the legacy of the company. I feel responsibility to the employees and the customers, but it's a big thing, all this stuff, and rising interest rates, and
it's a lot to handle, to deal with,
it's
right?
a big thing. What has helped is being worldwide. So when one country has an economic crisis, sometimes nowadays we get worldwide economic crisis. It's all at the same time, but that spread out thing helps. Helps.
Well, one thing that's interesting as well is that you still play music. So you haven't just gone into business and forgotten about playing saxophone. And we're even going to play together on your weekly gig.
You're going to play my gig? We've had this weekly gig at the Cuban restaurant, and we've had George Garzone and Tom Scott and Ed Calle, and last week Dave Glasser from the Basie Band. We've had a lot of great, great players, and you're going to be among those as great players. So that's really a thrill for me.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not to a George Gardner or your level. I'm not practicing. I can play to some degree, and I still have maybe. I say, okay, one of these days I'm going to get back into it in a serious way. But yeah.
I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, Jody. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun because I've been on this long trip and I haven't been able to play much. But I did get to sit in with a band in New York City last week, so that was a lot of fun.
Cool.
So now this is cool. This is my first time in Georgia and Savannah, so it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. So you told me you've been traveling. You just got in last night.
Late
Last night after a trip, and you were what in
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, and you're doing clinics at schools.
Yeah, about 4 or 5 at least high schools a day, and most of them
Wow.
they all start before school starts because their jazz band might not be able to have a regular period.
All right.
And so before and after school, but then there's some during school, sometimes concert bands, hustling up there with Schmidt music.
Okay, so what are these? Are they all different grade levels or?
A lot this week, a lot of high schools. Often I do middle schools and high schools. I go in, I don't even know usually what's going to happen or what kind of group it is. It could be the whole wind ensemble. It could be the jazz band. Once in a while, the director says, take my saxophones. And he might get saxophones from all 3 groups or whatever. And sometimes, when I'm working on the band, I have particular ways to show breathing, and that seems to get them actually playing full and in tune. I had some goosebump moments where all of a sudden the band just went, rah, and
Okay,
really
so
in tune.
what do you tell the kids to get them breathing in a more full sound?
They've heard it all before, but I tell them, I say, look, this is going to be a swimming pool breath. And it's as if I want them to fill up completely, and I want them to get rid of it all at once instead of doling it out. So first off, I say, you're going to go into water in an Olympic pool, one length and back, and without surfacing. Show me the breath you're going to take. And they all go, good. I say, excellent. You filled up as much as you can. Now exhale it like, get rid of it. But they go, I said, no, that's not going to cut it for our wind instrument. You're going to take that huge breath and you're going to get rid of it all at once. And I said, don't worry about the quality of the sound you're going to make. And maybe we're playing a B-flat concert chord. I've worked out the chord or some piece of music. Play that note as a long tone. Play it. They've already played it before. And then I said, okay, take that breath, let it all out at once. Bam, it sounds so full. They don't know, and all our adult amateurs or anybody, they don't know how much air you should be putting, how much air pressure in a way Coltrane was putting in that horn. And even when he's playing sweetly and beautifully, that's what separates the pros with great sounds from the amateurs. So I've had a lot of success with that. Another thing I talk about a lot, we have in the jazz bands, in most programs, you might have one kid or two with a jazz mouthpiece, which really gives them the volume, the level, the brightness and volume that they need to be a jazz band. But most have either a stock mouthpiece or a classical mouthpiece. And so the sax section, I got a poster in here. I don't know if you saw it. It shows the band. It's a Tone Deaf Comics. It shows band director, 8:30 in the morning, concert band, and he's going, saxophones, it's too loud. And then 3:30 in the afternoon, jazz band, he's going, saxophones, come on, I can't hear you. So if you don't have a jazz mouthpiece, and even if you do, if you're not supporting right, you can take a jazz mouthpiece and it still sounds kind of classical. So I have a YouTube video called How to Get a Jazzy Sound. And you have some of the best videos anywhere which show people how to get that jazzier sound. But these kids that don't have a jazz mouthpiece, I say, okay, you might not be able to get a jazz mouthpiece right now. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take your classical mouthpiece. Of course, we're going to breathe like I just showed you. We're going to take in a little more mouthpiece. And I show them how, if I'm playing classical, I might take in a certain amount, and I'm controlling the reed. And to exaggerate, I say I'm deadening the vibration so that I have this dark blending sound. Now I'm going to take in quite a bit more mouthpiece, and I'm going to let that reed freer. Plus, I go from here, the in, and I just let it natural. I go out, take more mouthpiece. All of a sudden, that reed was freed up. Also, maybe they have a, let's say, a Blue Box Van Doren 3 or 3.5. And those Blue Box are half strength harder than the jazz reeds. I say, okay, that's a great reed for concert band. Let's get a 2.5 jazz reed. And when you go to jazz band, put that on your classical mouthpiece. Take in more, less pressure, and you might have to push in more. It's all this stuff. And now you're getting a louder, jazzier sound. It won't be like if you got a nice jazz mouthpiece, like a Burnin mouthpiece or a JodyJazz HR Star. That's going to pop you right in the pocket, your band directors, especially if you're supporting. So that's one of the things I'm trying to help them with. We talk a lot about phrasing. We talk about swing. We talk about, I'm like, how do you know when to come in on the end of 4 in a swing thing? I'm counting off. How do you know when to come in? And they're like, oh, you feel it or something. Well, for us all to come in, we need to be subdividing in triplets. You know, do-da-do-da-do. And so we work on that stuff. We work on a lot of call and response by ear. I show them the minor pentatonic scale instead of the blues scale because they use the flat 5 too much.
Right.
I got another thing. I'm giving away all my stuff here. I like to show them this thing I call the sweet blues scale. 5, 6, 1, 2, flat 3. And it sounds bluesy, but it's not the blues scale. And just really encourage, show people that your practice session should be in 4 parts. If you have an hour, you've got 15 minutes each part, you might adjust the time, but your first part is sound and give them some ideas about sound. Your second part is technique. Remember we did that all 12 scales in one breath?
Yeah.
But, you know, scales, arpeggios, different things on technique. Third part is repertoire. The music you're working on, the music you want to learn. Fourth part, goof off. I say just play the horn or play with music that you like. It can be music that never had a saxophone and never will. Use your ear. So I want people to not give up their horn when they get out of band. I'm saying that, look, when you get out of band, maybe you've finished college or you're working or something, you're 30 years old, you're not going to go get, you know, your wind ensemble music and go,
Right.
That's no fun to play by yourself. So we got to figure out some music to play.
Yeah.
And that's what your site does. You know, I really recommend the BetterSax as you subscribe to it. You'll have all this material there, and it'll keep you moving. Really.
Yeah, that's the one thing with adults when they want to go back into learning music, whether it's saxophone or whatever. Most educational things are designed for school programs for obvious reasons, which is not the way adults want to learn things when you're more independent and you can do stuff on your own. So you want to say, I want to learn that. Show me how to get there quickly, and that's what people want to do. When you're a kid and you're at the school band, we have to learn how to play all together to prepare for a concert. But those are two very different things, and that was always one issue, is that adults just didn't have anything really designed for them to get the most enjoyment and progress at an efficient, quick pace.
Yep.
Well, yeah, so one thing I find in the teaching that I do, and as well as now with the designing of the products and selling of the products, it goes together, because part of getting better at saxophone is you got to have a good instrument, you got to have a good mouthpiece, and you got to know how to use that gear. So I learned a lot about how best to design the different pieces of equipment from all the many students that I have, and learning, what is it that they need, what is it that they want, and how can we help them get there the fastest. So I find just interacting with so many different people certainly helps me design much better products. So I think, yeah, that's like a necessary component to. It's one thing if you're just designing something, this is the best thing for me as a professional. But now you're just, you're kind of focusing on one avatar of a person. But when you're saying, okay, well, you want to be able to get good products for people at all the different levels, because it's not always, one thing. So you need to be working with people and hearing them play, and,
Yeah, and it happens all the time. This young lady yesterday morning, she couldn't get her low notes on the baritone. She was playing, and a lot of stuff wasn't coming out. It was a brand name mouthpiece, and I gave her a Russo 5R baritone mouthpiece, and she went blah, blah, just like nothing.
Right.
It felt so good.
Yeah.
So your stuff should play relatively easy. You have to have the right reed, the right stuff, but when it's working right, as long as you're supporting with air, you're playing with a decent embouchure, it shouldn't be.
No. And you don't want, and that's a great example of where a mouthpiece, the wrong mouthpiece, can just throw everything off.
And that was a well-known, actually good brand name mouthpiece. And I'm not sure what was going on. She didn't change reed or anything. It just gave her that mouthpiece. I know how easy those mouthpieces play with a good sound. So it's so great. Somebody goes, and it's so great. And, I've played your horns, played great. So I know you guys are taking care of making sure they're good. I just played your reeds. Giving you a Bobby De Niro look. Pretty good.
Yeah,
nice.
That's killer.
Nice.
So, yeah, and one thing, speaking of new products, last year you guys came out with the the DVHR.
I think wasn't it at the NAMM show this year?
Well, yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah.
I'm thinking last year. I'm already thinking it's 2024.
Well, you're so ahead of the curve.
So that was this year.
Yeah.
But now
DVHR Alto.
But now the tenor is almost ready for to be ordered.
We have done versions, and I've been playing it for a while. I gave you one to play now.
Yeah.
It'll be out any day now.
Oh, really? Is it that soon?
Yeah, it's just getting the final part of it, the website done, and getting all the information to dealers.
Okay.
It's
okay. Well, that's going to be great.
Yeah.
I hope you give me one to take home so I can do a proper video, or you send me one.
I think I can give you one. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I want to do a proper
Yeah.
comparison. I want to play it up against some other mouthpieces so people can really hear if it's the right thing for them. But the Alto is killer. The DVHR Alto is killer mouthpiece.
Thanks. I have good confidence in this one, in the tenor.
Yeah.
That we got it right where we wanted.
And the metal DV, that's been a favorite of so many players for a very long time. I love all the DVs. So I'm really looking forward to spending some time with that one and getting to know it.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, so should we get ready for our gig?
Yeah.
Head over there?
Yeah. Let's do that.
All right, man.
Thanks
for the tour, and thanks for being on the podcast. And
my pleasure.
Till next
Thank
time.
you, really, coming over.